Second.
With a second, all those in favor say yes.
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 Noes?
I abstain.
Shannon abstains.
Let the record show that the April 18th, 2024 minutes have been approved with 8 yes and 1 abstention. Mark, it looks like tonight we have 5 business items for consideration in our hearing and 4 items that are for discussion purposes only. And starting off with agenda item number 3, request for approval of design plans for the Turkey Creek Greenway and improvements to the abutting portions of Turkey Creek Road. Town of Farragut applicant. Hello, Darrell. Good evening. Take it away.
Yes, this item is the approval of design plans for the Turkey Creek Greenway extension on Turkey Creek Road.
I'm not sure your mic's on, Daryl.
Your mic's on.
Is it on? It's on.
Now try it. Do a test on it. See if you just have it. See if. Nope.
There's a button on the
It's on-
top there.
It's on the body.
I think yours is a little different than mine. Try the maybe the blue button. No.
Lit up.
Here, Daryl, just swap with me, and then we'll all figure it out.
Power. We'll have to vote on that.
There you go.
I would bring the pros.
That's embarrassing. Let me try it again. Is that okay?
It's better.
Yes.
Okay. This is approval of the design plans for the Turkey Creek Greenway extension. The idea is to extend the Turkey Creek Greenway along Turkey Creek Road from its western terminus on the west side of Brixworth subdivision, around by Sheffield subdivision, and on to Virtue Road. We have Jason Elliott with us tonight. He's a principal with LDA Engineering. Jason will walk us all through the plans, and I'll turn it over to him.
Jason, if you don't mind, could you provide us with your full name and address, or name and address, please?
Yes, sir. It's Jason Elliott, 2970 Sagegrass Drive, Louisville. And I'm with LDA Engineering. Our office is in Alcoa.
Perfect. Thank you, Jason.
So I'm going to present a quick overview of the preliminary plans. Mark,
Hey,
if you
Jason,
would-
the plans aren't in this PowerPoint for some reason. I don't know what happened. The sheets aren't in there.
They're not in there?
I've got some blank sheets as well, if that's what you're I've got like every other page is blank on my packet.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there.
But I have them, and I had them printed out.
Yeah, I've got them too.
I think those blank
Scroll down
pages,
some.
Noah, were
Can you scroll down some more? Because he's got them on his.
He does.
Oh, those were supposed to be blank?
Yeah.
Okay. I do see some engineering documents in here for the walking trail.
No, it's not in there. It's just those 2 sheets.
Why do you have them on yours? If
I'm
you-
not, this is off I downloaded this from
Oh.
the website, from the town website.
Can you,
The one that you sent me, Clark.
Mark, can you plug into his
yeah, can we
computer?
patch him in?
And this is pretty complicated stuff.
Probably not if you're using a PC and you're going to Apple, probably something's going to be off.
Well, I had them printed
Maybe.
off from the. Can you do Apple from?
Let me see about, Daryl, you had emailed that to me.
It is on the website
Yeah, let
agenda.
me get out of
I am getting engineering documents on that packet.
See that? Yeah, okay.
Well, we've got some blanks on tonight's packet, and and Ron has the same thing on his. But maybe Adobe's got something weird going
I
on.
apologize for that. I didn't notice that.
Maybe we go ahead and continue with the presentation, and then we'll try to get some exhibits up on the screen.
I'll do my best to go from memory and not speak from the slides. So as Daryl mentioned, the project limits are at the west end, the bridge over Little Turkey Creek, and at the east end, it's the existing greenway behind the Brixworth neighborhood. And the total project length is about 1/3 of a mile. Talk about the typical cross sections for a few minutes. Does anybody have the plans that they can refer to? This is going to be so difficult to.
I do. Do you want to borrow my laptop? I mean, I've got the engineering documents with cross-sections in them. And you can borrow, it's just an iPad. You're welcome to borrow it. and
I
I'll
don't
just
really
follow
need
along.
them. It's going to be hard for y'all to follow.
Well, I have a plan. Do you have the plans?
We have them here. He just
Yeah, they're on the
Okay.
website link.
Okay.
They're on the website,
Well-
they just weren't.
If anybody has questions, just stop me and I'll.
Let's talk about the divergence. So when I'm looking at the overall plan, when I'm thinking of a divergence, to me, in my mind, that means it's going away from Turkey Creek Road. What I'm seeing is a line that actually getting closer to the right of way. And I'm talking basically at the eastern end of the trail. Would
Correct.
you describe that, what we mean by a divergence?
That's not my word.
Okay.
It does taper in towards closer to the road. So let me just talk about that typical section that's for the majority of the project. It's an 8-foot asphalt greenway and an 8-foot grass strip in between the greenway and the proposed curb line. And then we've got a new curb and gutter on the north side of Turkey Creek Road and some minor widening of Turkey Creek Road, between 2 and 3 feet of widening. Now going back to your question, that 8-foot grass strip narrows down to 3.5 feet in the taper that you're talking about. And the reason it does that is one of the residential driveways is very steep. It's on the Baca property. And we actually had to do a complete realignment of their driveway just to get the greenway across it. We couldn't cross the driveway up higher. We had to move it down towards the road. And it's hard to describe the geometry of it, but that's the point of the project where the existing grade really starts to climb and our profile grades get very steep
You're
there.
trying to do this, basically. You're trying to get a flat cross-section across a sloped driveway, which is pretty steep.
That's exactly right.
So you're doing that with retaining wall? You got some, I guess, some low retaining walls through there?
There are quite a few retaining
Okay.
walls. They actually start on the Anderson property, which is just to the east of Baca. To the west. So they start, the first wall starts at the Anderson driveway. And by the time you get to the other side of the Baca's driveway, we have 2 walls, one on each side of the greenway, because that existing grade is so steep, it's like a 1-to-1 slope, and it's wooded. To get that 8-foot flat spot in there, it
You got a cut
required.
wall and a fill wall, I assume, is what you have going on there.
That's correct. Yep.
I knew that was, it's probably the most expensive section of trails that we've ever built in the town of Farragut, but it is what it is. It's desperately needed.
It's only 1/3 of a mile, but it's a tough 1/3 of a mile, especially that part of the project.
The narrow part of the sidewalk, and Greenway, how long is the narrow part?
Pardon?
You said the Greenway gets narrow there for a while?
The
green
the
strip.
grass strip
Grass.
gets
Oh, the grass strip.
narrower.
Oh, okay.
Yes, sir.
And how long a distance is that there? The whole thing?
It's not very long because it just narrows at their driveway, and then it starts to taper back out to the full 8 feet.
I understand.
Now, I'll kind of build on your question. There is a part at the west end of the project, the beginning of the project, closer to Virtue Road. There is an area where we're just proposing 5-foot concrete sidewalk rather than the 8-foot asphalt greenway. And that's because we're tying into existing sidewalk, leading into the Sheffield neighborhood and then tying into that bridge over the creek. So we go from 5-foot to 8-foot on the other side of the Sheffield entrance. I have a lot more information that I can try to get through
Go with it.
without the, without the slides. So I mentioned the roadway widening, 2 to 3 feet of widening, which is going to result in two 11-foot lanes. So Turkey Creek Road will be 22 feet wide total. Right now, it's about between 19 and 20. So that's much preferable. And then the curb and gutter that we're adding on the north side will add even more of a buffer between the westbound vehicle traffic and the Greenway users. So we've got that nice grass buffer plus a new curb line that's creating separation there.
So I take it, I don't have a drainage plan on here, but I take it each curb inlet just has some RCP that just goes under the right-of-way and spills out into the lake? Is that what's happening here?
So there are 3 or 4 existing cross drains that go under the road to the creek currently.
Mm-hmm.
And we're maintaining that.
Okay.
We're not adding any catch basins, we're not adding any pipes.
You're just putting curb inlets at those locations?
Yeah, we're just keeping the water where it's going now.
Okay.
It'll just be more concentrated by a curb rather than a ditch.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I've got a question concerning the height of the Greenway compared to the road, because where the Turkey Creek Greenway ends now, it's pretty high. There's pretty high elevation between where it is and the road is.
yes, sir.
Is this Greenway going to come down to the road level, or is it going to stay up high?
It comes down to the road level. So if we're starting at that east end where we're up high, it actually will taper towards the road, because that's set pretty far back,
Yeah.
that existing Greenway. It'll taper towards the road, and it's going to come down that hill. And by the time we get down to the Baca's driveway, we're very close to the road grade.
The rest of the way, it's close to the road.
Yeah, it may be a foot or two above in some places, but it'll be close.
Now, you mentioned there's a part of the road, there's a retaining wall on both sides.
Pardon?
There's a retaining wall on both sides of the Greenway?
For a short section,
Yeah,
it
and
is.
how high is that lower retaining wall?
I think the maximum height, and it's in the cross sections that was in the PDF, but I think the maximum height of that lower wall is maybe between 4 and 5 feet. of
So it'll definitely be
exposed.
handrails. Handrails, I mean, anything over 30 inches, you got to have handrails, so I assume.
They have.
All the
them.
walls have handrails, all of them. Just for the safety, kids climbing up on top, we're just putting handrails on all the walls.
Looks like there's quite a bit of slope.
And while we're on the handrail, what is the design of the handrail?
It's the same handrail that you'll see on Virtue Road.
Oh, the new trail on the other side of the creek?
It's painted black.
Basically like 3 horizontal rails, maybe?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
No, no, I think we're using the picket, the vertical picket.
Okay.
It keeps kids from crawling through. I think the maximum separation is 4 inches between the vertical bars.
I mean, 4 or 5 feet, you know, that'll be painful. So it's a good thing to have some fall protection through there, even for little kids.
Definitely, yes.
Do y'all look at any options to handle that large slope between, let's say, marker 2340 and 2480? You got like an 8.3% slope in that area? That's pretty aggressive.
I'm glad you brought that up. So we had to do the same thing on the Greenway parallel to Virtue Road that was just completed recently. There was a steep part of that also that we're essentially creating ramps. We're creating 8.3% ramp for 30 feet, and then there's a flat landing for 5 feet, and then it climbs again to 8.3. And so ADA requires those flat landings for wheelchairs when the grade exceeds 5%. And there will be a handrail for people to use. But honestly, that was the only way to get over that hill without having 30-foot retaining walls. You know, we looked at several options through there, and it was tough. I mean, that was the hard part of the project, was that west end near the Bacchus driveway.
How, those sections, looks like there's 4 of them between those stadium lines. It looks like they're about 5 feet. Is that
5-foot landings, yes. So you got 30 feet of running slope and then a 5-foot landing.
an 8.3% grade?
Which, it looks bad on there because that's exaggerated vertically
Yeah, but I
5
understand
times.
8.3% grade.
It's still a pretty good grade, but it doesn't look like that bad in real life.
I understand.
See what other points I wanted to bring up. Let me talk about property for a minute. Part of the plan set that you should have received has a set of property maps, and these maps show the existing right-of-way, existing property lines, proposed right-of-way, proposed easements that we're going to need to build the project. And as it's currently designed today, we're going to need to acquire either right-of-way and/or easements from 6 property owners on the north side of Turkey Creek Road. I will say the areas are, some people might disagree, but I'll say they're relatively small. The largest acquisition on any one parcel is 5,900 square feet, which is just over 1/10 of an acre, and that's all along the frontage, of course.
Which parcel is that?
That's Ms. Harkin's parcel.
Number 7.
The other ones are similar, but hers was a little more. I think the right-of-way actually jogs in a little bit in front of her.
Yeah, by their driveway.
Now, at the east end of the project, where all these steep grades are that I've been talking about, the existing right-of-way actually it jogs out and is much wider there. So we don't need to get any acquisition from the 3 parcels in the Brixworth neighborhood. That would be their backyards, but we won't need to get anything from them just because the right-of-way is so wide there. Look through my notes here. Does anybody else have any specific questions?
Where is this? What is this? Where is this go from where?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
He's got an elevation map, and I was just,
Oh, okay.
yeah, but where is this on this? So it starts here and goes that way? See sheet number. Oh, that's this. Oh, here's the, here it is. I found it. Okay.
One other thing to note is that we're proposing to mill and resurface the existing asphalt of Turkey Creek Road. So once they build the widening part, then they'll just overlay the whole thing with one nice smooth surface and do the restriping for the 11-foot lanes.
Get the crown back.
Pardon?
Get the crown back.
Well, part of that's in a curve, so we'll probably just match what's there. Just do an 1.25 inch overlay.
While you're, have this project under construction, have y'all checked those culverts? I mean, there's probably some old metal pipe under the road through there. I mean, if there's ever an opportunity that we want to replace that pipe with either concrete pipe or new metal pipe, we tried not to use much corrugated metal pipe, but mostly, I mean, I assume when y'all done your field survey work, you've spent some time looking at, make sure, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised some of those pipes are 60 years old under that road.
We did survey them, of course, and they didn't know, usually my survey crew will note if there's deterioration or a pipe doesn't look good.
Okay.
But,
I'm just thinking about corrosion on these old, galvanized metal pipes.
yeah, I don't like the corrugated metal.
I agree. I'd
because-
rather use concrete. If we're tearing it all up, I'd rather see you
Yeah.
But if the pipes are good, I'm not saying that, don't replace it if you don't have to,
Right.
But I just want to make sure on the record that you guys have spent some time inspecting those pipes. Obviously, I suspect nobody got in there and crawled through,
No.
a 15-inch diameter pipe, but I suspect some of them are really old.
Well, we can definitely look at that and assess what the condition is of those, I think, 4 pipes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, typically when you have, being that close to residential where they use fertilizer, that's kind of hard on the galvanized.
I got a question. You say that this project's going to take a third of a mile. How much of that third is going to be widened? All of it or part of it?
Most of it,
What?
most of it from,
Up there, where could we?
so where that arrow's coming in that says proposed greenway,
Okay, all
just to
that.
the right of Shirecliff Lane, that's about where the resurfacing is starting, because that's where the widening is starting.
Starts there.
Yes. Everything to the west of that is already at least 22 feet wide.
Okay. So how far down? All the way to where it says site divergence? All that's going to be widened all the way
Yes.
down to there?
All the way to the end of the
Okay.
project.
Thank you.
The only other thing I have on my notes that I would want to mention is that the cross sections that are in that set of plans, those are cut every 25 feet along the greenway, just to give an idea of what the grading will look like and, how far out we need to go to tie in. And if you take some time and look at those, you'll see that the grading is pretty minimal. There's not a lot of earthwork because we stayed as close to existing grade as we could. Now, of course, like Mr. Myers mentioned, we're putting a flat spot into a slope, so there is some cut and fill to get that to tie in, but it's not extreme. And that's pretty much all I had, unless there are more questions.
I'm going to ask for a motion before we open it up for discussion and then public input. If I could, do we have a motion on the floor for approval?
So moved.
Second.
With a motion and a second. Mark, I do understand that we do have people signed up for this agenda item.
Yes, sir.
So if you would, when Mark calls your name, please step up to the podium and give your name and address, please.
The first speaker is Steve Williams. You go last. Have Dustin Anderson.
Dustin Anderson? Hello. Thank you.
You may have to adjust that mic there, Dustin.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I think we
Yeah,
got you.
that's good.
Okay. So I'm Dustin Anderson. My property is 12233 Turkey Creek in Farragut. So when I first found out the Greenway was coming to cross the property, my wife and I were excited. We have 2 little kids, perfect to get on. So my only concerns now are when you look at my property and you see a typical Farragut property, you think a yard, a nice house, and now when you drive up, all you're going to see is a retaining wall and a fence. So I'm worried about diminished home values. The other thing kind of that I'm concerned about is we're trying to get it to where we can build on the property. We have had some obstacles. So we were going to have to run water and sewer from about where the new Greenway is going to have to start. We're going to have to run it all the way from there to our property. Now, if I'm able to do that, this would be something that if you're able to get this done before I can get that done, it's going to be a big financial burden now to be able to do that, to have to go through retaining walls and through the Greenway to be able to get the sewer and water there. The other concern I have is the neighbor's driveway will now be displaced from their property onto my property. The whole width of their driveway on the new plans will be on my property, and it looks like it will go some 20, 25 feet up my property and then start to turn. So the other thing I have is there are liability issues there. If that freezes over and the neighbor falls and it's that's on my property, is that now my liability? So it's just, now it's turned from, now that we've seen the plan, something we were excited about, to now we're kind of dreading. Because now all we see is even more obstacles that we're going to have to try to get this done. And sorry, this is my first time ever doing anything like this.
Oh, yeah, you're fine.
You're doing great.
Thank you.
So also, the second thing is our driveway is not as steep as the Baca's, but also worry about when this comes across, my driveway is a gradual slope all the way up, is now, there's going to be a big flat area, and then it's going to have to start to go up now. About the descent of coming down and trying to stop if there were rain or ice and somebody happened to be coming across through there and not being able to get stopped. That is my only other concern kind of that. So just ask for consideration on those. If there are any other alternatives that might possibly be able to be done, or
Mr. Anderson, I think I might be able to help you a little bit. I'm looking at the proposed construction drawings. So the area that the Vaca's driveway would be crossing yours would actually be right away. So there, you would be compensated. There would be an appraisal done, and you would be compensated for that. You would, according to this particular plan, you would be losing a small area of your property. That would mitigate any liability issues. So their driveway would actually access directly on the right-of-way of which then the town of Farragut owns. The public taxpayer then assumes the liability for that.
Okay.
So that's kind of one kind of observation that hopefully might give you some comfort. The other thing that this might be an opportunity is the road's is going to be torn up, and we're going to repave the road. To my memory, those manholes run right down the sewer manholes. The sanitary sewer manholes run right down the middle of Turkey Creek Road. If there's ever a time for you to have a tap and to be able to directly access sewer, I assume, didn't there used to be a house on your property many years ago?
So that's what we were told, but then we've been told by neighbors that there never was a house there.
But just a driveway?
Just a driveway, and that she used that just for parking because
Okay.
she had the house across the street, that she just used it for parking and then had a well put in so that she could water her plants.
Okay.
So, yeah, and that may be, just because we were told the Bacas, they are tapped into that line, but we were told that it shouldn't have been, that they actually should have been tapped further way down as well because that line is pressurized.
Oh, I thought it was a gravity line that went through there.
It-
No,
it's
that's
not. So
a different,
it is a
little bit different
pressurized.
animal.
So that's why they wanted us to go way down the road to be able to tap in and then to have to bring it all the way back down the road to our property. So they were talking about us having to go, the map's not up now, but all the way from about where it starts to tap in, then all the way down to the property.
It is a little more challenging to tap into a pressurized. So you've got
Yeah.
and we've got a good engineer here, a couple of good engineers in the room that could, but nevertheless, I assume it's a force main through there, and that does create some challenges. You can't just tap directly into the force main.
Yeah.
They're probably trying to get you upstream somewhere where it does gravity out, which is a little bit of a challenge. So my solution there may not work, but I did want to propose something that could be a possibility. What are your thoughts about if you and the Bacas actually shared an entrance? You had an entrance that wide off, one went to your new house someday that you're going to build, and then the other went over to the existing, where the Bacas are now, kind of tied into their driveway, and there was one shared entrance. I can't remember exactly how good the line of sight is. There's not great line of sight on that curve, period, but I wonder if maybe sliding your driveway over towards the Bacas might actually improve the safety and line of sight.
So when we talked with the engineer
Daryl?
several months ago. Yeah.
Okay.
He talked about because of that, where our property was, the line of sight would be better, but we didn't discuss whether it would be there, just because if it's going to be coming in higher, I don't anticipate the grade and everything on theirs at the road will probably change very much. But I don't know. I've not got to study the plans real good, but from what I could tell, the line of sight would still be best where my driveway is now. But I mean, that would be something we would be willing to consider.
Is Jason, maybe we get Jason back up and he can, I suspect that I know that some town staff as well as you guys have been working on this for a long time, and we've been talking about this for a while now. And I suspect a lot of these options that you've already kind of worked through, and there's random reasons why, well, this option A doesn't work, option B doesn't work, so that's why we're looking at option C. Maybe if you could give us a little bit more information on this to address, maybe a shared entrance. It seems to me that would be a great idea, assuming we can try to meet a good visibility triangle.
We can certainly look at that if the property owners were open to that possibility. It's not something we've looked at yet, a shared entrance. Both driveways are very steep. Mr. Anderson's driveway is steep too, and it comes right down into the road, like without a curve or anything.
Well, my thought is like you did on the Bacchus, anytime that you can increase the run over the same amount of rise, you're actually improving the conditions. And so all of a sudden, Mr. Anderson could get his run increased over the same amount of rise by doing something similar to what the Bacchus have. We might be able to solve two birds with one stone and have one less access point on Turkey Creek Road. Assuming we got both homeowners that are willing to kind of cooperate with this. I assume the Bacchus have already seen some sort of plan, or maybe they're here tonight, because their driveway has a major configuration, and it does encumber Mr. Anderson's property probably more than anybody else is encumbered. What I'm trying to do is maybe there's a solution that's really a win-win, that's good for the community and good for these residents who are going to be impacted by new driveways and construction and retaining walls and handrails.
We can look at the joint entrance. We could also look at just doing for Anderson's what we did for the Bacchus and having a realignment, horizontal realignment of their driveway to do the more run over rise like you're talking about.
Okay.
It just depends what they would be open to.
So, Mr. Anderson, we're kind of open-minded to trying to come up with a good solution. This doesn't solve your sewer issue. Your sewer issue may be a lot bigger than I realized it was. And that's something that you'll just have to sit down and kind of hammer out with First Utility.
Noah, can I ask?
Yeah,
a question?
sure, Louise.
Regardless of whether we're doing this project or not, that's going to be the same issue. He's going to have to go.
Well, we're going to make his issue more challenging when all of a sudden, if we're getting down next to the right-of-way or in a new proposed right-of-way and we're adding retaining walls and walking trails, instead of him putting a sewer line, and what I assume y'all will be doing on this is probably putting like a low E system with a 2-inch line, which is kind of what's called a low-pressure system, which is easier than trying to do a gravity line. But all of a sudden, now he's having to cross a lot more obstacles than he would be today.
So the only good result is if to work with him on timing so that this is done in conjunction with this project.
Yeah, which probably means that Mr. Anderson probably have to pony up with First Utility District to spend a little bit of money to try to go ahead. I mean, you got to think this project, we're in the planning, design, approval phase. There's still a long way to go with right-of-way acquisition and permitting and bid letting and so forth. And I may be speaking out of turn. Daryl could probably say, no, Noah, we're fast-tracking this. We have grant money, and we have to do it in 2024. I don't think that's the case. But it might be that you may want to move quicker with First Utility rather than slower. Obviously, if you're doing a low-pressure line, you want to make sure it's deep enough that those footers for those retaining walls are not going to tear up your low-pressure line. And you can work through that. But I do like the idea of trying, I think a shared driveway entrance would really be a win-win for both of you. It would make your driveway less steep. And again, it's all about that rise over run. And I would encourage you especially if you could put it somewhere in there that improves the line of sight, I think that would be a real win-win. And I know there's probably some other folks that are signed up for this. We've spent a lot of time on it. Mr. Anderson, so we kind of talked about just the encroachment with retaining walls and handrails in your yard. We talked about the sewer issue. Was there a third issue? Let's get you back on the mic if you don't mind.
What's your timing for what you guys are thinking?
Well, that may be something Mark can
Well,
actually kind of help out with through.
Let's get you on the microphone.
Let me clarify
we
one.
do record the meetings. We've got folks that like to watch it on YouTube. So we're welcome to. So maybe we can hear from Jason about timing of the total project, and then Mr. Anderson's timing about when he wants to build his house.
I just want to clarify that any utility connections that they want to make, ideally, they would happen from his driveway to the west because there won't be a wall on that side of his driveway. It doesn't start until we get east. So that would be one option, just throwing that out.
Yeah, unless we had a representative from First Utility knowing exactly what's going on there and where he's eligible to tie in, who knows?
Thank you, Mr. Anderson, if you don't mind.
So in reference to getting that done with the First Utility, we have contacted them, and that's kind of where they got that we needed to do everything from the east and then bring it west to the house. But what we have run into was when the property was purchased, and we've been in great contact with Mark and trying to work out everything with the town of Farragut's attorney, is on deciding, I think Mr. Shipley found out that our property may have been illegally subdivided. So that's what we're running into now. And that's why I haven't been able to go forward.
Okay.
And so on the KGIS, it shows them as two separate parcels, and the last ones Mark was able to show, it still showed them as one parcel. So that's what we're still trying to get. We've kind of been waiting, I guess, on the town attorney for about 3 months now to be able to decide if it was divided correctly or if it wasn't, and what our next course of action is, because we were wanting to build a house, and then my wife had to quit her job, so then we were going to list it, and we listed it, and when it went up for sale, that was when, I guess, Mark and his staff noticed that it wasn't done correctly.
Well, the one thing about that is we can't purchase right-of-way until we know that gets resolved.
Yeah,
So-
I mean, that puts a cloud on the title
Even
to
though
a certain degree.
my property fits every description of being able to have the house on there, the house that was across the street now would not have enough land to have a house on it. It would be under 2/10 of an acre, or around 2/10 of an acre.
I know the
think,
property you're talking about across the street.
So that's kind
it's
of
a
where
tiny little lot.
what we've run into.
How big a property is it?
It's tiny. I mean, it's on a little sliver up against, now,
Yeah.
part of that property may actually go down under the lake, and so on paper, it may look bigger than it actually is. Their
Yeah.
probably issue is sewer as well. They're probably on some old septic system, probably
I think
55
they
gallon
are
drum.
on septic because we have an easement onto their property. We have a dock and everything that came with the property. And so when we were talking to them about what their plans were when they obtained the property and what ours were, he's not decided what he wants to do. He says, you can use even more than the easement if you wanted to. He says, but I don't know where my septic is, so I don't know. So he's on the assumption that he is on septic as well, or he's on septic instead of sewer.
Some of those houses probably date back to the 1940s or 50s through there, well before First Utility ever had sewer in that part of town.
Yeah.
Legacy of Knox County.
So that's,
So
so that's what I
I
would
guess
have.
what we're learning is your particular
Yeah.
issue may be a lot more complicated than we realize.
Yes, 'cause
Obviously,
we
what we're trying to do is we're trying to work through something that staff has, and the Board of Mayor and Aldermen have had on the capital improvement plan to be able to tie these walking trails together.
Yeah.
Time is of the essence on your part. Obviously, you're aware of that, especially if you wanted to be able to preemptively try to, if you're eligible to build a house, you may or may not be, and that's still to be determined, then you're going to want to preemptively try to get, I assume you're going to want to try to get your sewer issue resolved. Water should be a lot easier in there.
Yeah, because they were thinking we could actually tie in where the Bacas are
Okay.
and bring it from there. So that one wouldn't be near as far or as much to do on that one.
Other than the retaining walls and the handrails, unfortunately, there's not a whole lot. I mean, when you're dealing with a slope and a cross-section of what we're trying to deal with, and we're trying to get a reasonably flat spot across there that's 8 feet wide, you're gonna end up with some retaining walls. Obviously, we want them to look good.
Yeah.
Probably better than most communities would do, but they are kind of what they are, unfortunately.
Yes, yeah, so that's why I was also worried about once I do would be if my property is as it is now and it's worth, we were to do the house and it's worth X amount of money, and then you've got a big retaining wall and you were to have to sell, is there going to be a diminished value because now a lot of buyers aren't going to want it because of the big retaining wall that spans the whole front of the property versus now you just have a yard in the front. So that's my other major concern would be.
How tall is the retaining wall there? On the one side?
Let's say uphill, above the trail or below the trail side.
So it would be on the uphill side.
pretty short walls in comparison to what,
Comparison
most of the times you
itself.
see. Mr. Anderson, if it's any consolation, in my experience with kind of 30 years of real estate in Farragut, the access to walking trails actually, it helps property values. I know you have concerns because there's kind of a fear of the unknown. And I've heard other residents and clients and folks, applicants and homeowners with those concerns, but I think generally speaking, families like having access to those walking trails. It's a heck of a lot safer if your kids want to go ride their bike. You want them on those walking trails well before you want them on Turkey Creek Road.
Yeah, and as what I stated as before, we were excited about it, and now we're just kind of worried about, the retaining
unknown.
wall.
Yeah.
The unknown about how it could affect the future of our property, as far as if we had to resell or selling, and also just our kids. I've got 2 little kids. They love to climb.
Yeah.
And, yeah, so.
We're serious
Yes.
about your concerns. I think, I would like to have Jason and the staff to look at maybe joining the driveway, doing a shared driveway if it's possible. Obviously, we need the Bacas involved, or, at least
So-
participating cooperatively with that. But we may not solve all the issues, but we do take them seriously.
Not speaking for them, but I think they've kind of tried to opt out, and they're now selling their house.
Okay.
And I believe it's went under contract, so they're trying to, I think,
Okay.
get out of the way of it.
Those
But
are all valid
We do
considerations.
appreciate it, Mr. Anderson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Anderson.
The
Mark
next
Wood.
speaker is John Neal.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name's John Neal. My address is 6657 Ridge Rock Lane, Knoxville. Where? 6657 Ridge Rock Lane.
Hello, Mr. Neal.
I'm an attorney in Knoxville. I represent Ms. Harkins, Mr. Galbraith, and Howard and Bobby Tipton. I know I don't have a lot of time, so I'll start with the lawyer stuff first. I think there's some serious practical issues too. I know there was originally one option, and you already have a right of way for it. I think you all call that option C now. Mr. St. Clair, option C is steep 2. Option C is steep 2. You all were talking about the steepness of what the Greenway will be. Option C would be steep 2, and I've looked at it, walked over it, and I recognize it would be steep 2, but all the folks that are affected by this project strongly oppose it. And I can guarantee you that litigation is afoot. And in the long run, I think you'd be better off to go with option C. Of course, that's not my decision, that's yours. Here's the lawyer part. The lawyer part is that when Sheffield was built, there was a meeting of the Planning Commission. And it was in January 20 of 2005, and the minutes say, staff recommended denial of a variance request from requirement to construct sidewalks or equivalent on Turkey Creek Road and Virtue Road. Commissioner Jones moved to approve the variance request and to not require a sidewalk or equivalent to be constructed from the west end of the subdivision entrance, west taper on Turkey Creek Road to Virtue Road and along Virtue Road. Commissioner Edlin seconded the motion, and it passed 7-0. That variance was actually incorporated into the map of the project that was recorded with the Register of Deeds office. And paragraph 10 says, variance to sidewalk requirement along Virtue Road and Turkey Creek Road along the Galbraith property, lot 202, was granted January 20, 2005. Now, of course, since that time, a lot of people have bought property in Sheffield, and this map was signed by Mr. Galbraith, signed by the town, and I think there's some pretty strong case law that would suggest that there's a contractual relationship between Mr. Galbraith and the town, especially because folks have bought in Sheffield relying on the representations in these maps. I think he's got to breach a contract action against the town if you take this option. I think it's a pretty serious problem. I've only been working on it a few days. I've researched it all day today. I think there's some case law to back that up. I hate to tell you this, Tom Hale's a good friend of mine, he can't work on this case. He's conflicted. So whoever you get to advise you on it, it won't be Tom. But I think that you've got a pretty good argument that it would be a breach of contract, and which would mean that Mr. Galbraith would be entitled to injunctive relief against the town. Now, from a practical standpoint, I don't really think you get the hang of this project unless you actually go out and walk along the property, which I did about a year ago, and I did again this afternoon. And if you go up Ms. Harkin's driveway, for instance, and you go back 25 feet from the street, the cut would be about head high on May. You're going to make these driveways extremely steep. It's going to make the property basically impossible to access in inclement weather, especially if you had a homeowner who was old or disabled. And as a matter of fact, all three of the current owners are pretty elderly. And I just don't think that it's feasible. And then there was that issue about cost. One of you folks brought up the fact that this was the most expensive part of the Greenway anybody had ever built. I actually took a look at that. The original plan was supposed to cost $370,000. Now it's $2,500,000. And you all were just talking about the fact that, well, maybe we'll have to work on the culverts. Well, that's going to run the price up more. And then there's the fact that you don't just pay for the strip of land, you pay for the incidental damages the property owners suffer. So if you have appraisers who say that the property values are going to decrease because of what it's going to do to their yards, you're going to have to pay that too. It's going to cost you a lot more.
5 minutes is passed.
My time up?
Yeah, if you would wrap it up, please. Thank you, Mr. Neal.
Well, I'm about done. It's a very thorny problem, and it'd be a lot easier to just take Route C and avoid a lot of these problems.
Thank you, Mr. Neal. Those are all valid considerations. I appreciate your
Yes, sir.
time.
I have a question for Mr. Neal. Mr. Neal, can you explain to me the conflict of interest with Tom Hale again?
He represents Ms. Harkin's family.
Okay. I thought you were from the same firm. You're from different firms, but you're
No.
saying he also represents the family.
No, actually, Tom and I have already talked about this, and he recognizes that he's going to have to withdraw from this case.
Okay.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for Jason, the engineer, that may or may not shed some light on one of Mr. Neal's arguments. Jason, does the post-construction grade of those driveways, is any of those post-construction grades of the driveways steeper than the pre-construction grades of the driveways?
No, it either matches or it's less.
Okay, that's what I thought we were striving to achieve, and I just wanted you on the record to be able to say that.
It's shown, and it would help if I had the driveway profiles in front of me, but the grades are shown on there. And there's a dash line, which is the existing grade, and a bold line, which is the proposed grade. And I mean, there may be a slight increase in some of them. I don't want to misspeak, but it's.
Well, if you're not ready to go on the record with that, then I'll withdraw the question. Because my interpretation is that you guys have gone to great lengths, maybe with additional cut, but gone to great lengths to make sure that you're not increasing the steepness of anybody's driveway, even though we're trying to add these flat spots, but that we're not increasing, because there's some steep driveways.
And that's how we always approach driveway connections. But yeah, I guess I shouldn't go on the record. I should look at the numbers before I absolutely state that.
Okay. I do appreciate your insight. That was it.
We have copies of these. So you want to look at them and make a statement?
Well, it may not be as easy as just instantly making a statement. I mean, there's a lot of driveway. What do we have? We're dealing with 5 or 6 driveways, is that right? Just 4 total driveways. Okay.
Mark, do we have another speaker?
Yeah, the next
Sign up?
speaker is Janet Galbraith.
Okay, I don't really like to talk at these things, but I'm here on behalf of my father, and myself our road, 12331 Turkey Creek. We oppose this. We were given a
Please,
variance in
just give us your name.
2005.
Just give us your name for the record.
Janet Galbraith.
Thank you, Ms. Calvert, I appreciate it.
We were given that variance in 2005, saying something like this would never happen. The town of Farragut did. You all may not have been on the board at that point, but the people that were gave us that, and we want you all to stick to that. And I'll defer the rest of my time to my attorney. If you want to speak some more, Rebecca? Okay. Well, y'all have a good day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mark, we've got another speaker.
Have one more
signed up.
speaker, Steve Williams.
Steve Williams, 721 Virtue Road. I had some questions about the road. As you know, I've been complaining about the speed and the loud cars. It's egregious on Virtue and Turkey Creek. We're going to widen the road, which normally I would be supporting. Normally I would be saying, wow, a couple feet on either side of the road is a great thing with curb and gutter. But it's not here, and it's not the right thing to do. The speed, no one drives 30 miles an hour. You might as well take the signs down. It's very unsafe. The loud cars are somewhere between 30 and 40 a day, exceeding Knox County noise ordinance. I've been recording it. The speeding, which we've been recording, is over 100 a day in front of my house. I've talked to the sheriff's department. I've talked to the mayor. Nobody cares. So I don't think the town needs to be doing anything else until we, as a town, and I know this is not mayor and alderman, the town needs to sit down and have a heart-to-heart talk about what do we want in this town. The walking trails are great, but we have no security, we have no police protection, we have speeding, we have loud cars. You can't even sit on your back patio. I don't think anybody here can say they can sit outside in the summer and not be inundated with loud cars. I don't think anybody here can say the speeding's not over the top in the town of Farragut. I think we need to take a step back and stop talking about all these capital improvements, and we need to look at the quality of life, because we're losing our quality of life in the town. The town of Farragut quality of life is really going down. You can't drive on the roads. I don't think anybody would say we have great roads right now, because it's like a racetrack, and it's not safe. It's not safe for anybody. We have no enforcement. I don't know what to do. I'm open for suggestions. We have government to provide safety and security. That's the first order of business. Sidewalks are great. I'm sorry, is that me, Mark?
You can keep going. If
Okay.
Yeah, I've got you.
Okay.
Just
Anyway,
keep brief, though. I appreciate
I just think we need to sit down and look at that. If I were doing this myself and I were drawing this, I would put a roundabout in front of Sheffield. We need to slow people down. We need to slow it down. If I'm not mistaken, First Utility owns across the street. So that could possibly be worked out. I'm not trying to build big roads, because being a developer, I used to think big roads were great. Now, after seeing what's going on with the speeding, I've got to change my mind. And I know the town of Farragut, on the other side of town, the north side of town, has done some pretty neat things to slow folks down. I think on the south side of town, we need to have some of that. We need to have some innovative looks at security, speed, safety. I just don't think this is a good idea, putting this sidewalk in that curve in front of these homes y'all been talking about. You're going to have a sidewalk right up against the road, unless I'm mistaken. I read the plans. And then lastly, I'll close with this. The slopes. I've been beat up on this my whole life as a developer. 3-to-1 slope, 4-to-1, 5-to-1 slope. Every time I've ever done anything, when you say less than a 2-to-1 slope, you mean, less than a 3-to-1 slope, what you're saying is it's steeper. I've never been able to grow grass on anything less than a 3-to-1. I've never done a good job on landscaping. I've always gone back and had to fix it. The slopes on these drawings in many, many spots exceed what I've had my butt kicked on all these years. And I've paid lots of money to go back and fix stuff. Down on Turkey Creek, the big slope on Turkey Creek that the town's worked on however many times, I think y'all got it now. that I know the town spent a lot of money trying to establish that slope down on Turkey Creek. These slopes are not that steep. That's a really steep slope. But these slopes will not work in the long run. You'll put grass out, it'll go away, especially where it's shaded in that area. You'll not grow grass on it, and you'll have trouble. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Okay, Mark, before we move on, I just want to run through the fellow commissioners and see if there are any additional comments. Commissioner Pinchuk, do you have anything you'd like to add or any questions?
Okay.
Commissioner Green?
I just want to say, it sounds like, from an engineering point of view, it's okay, but it looks like there's some issues to be resolved before we really want to recommend approval for this.
Thank you, Commissioner Green. Commissioner Devlin, anything you'd like to add?
Sorry. Yeah, I definitely have some real concerns. I would love to extend the Greenway. Who doesn't want to do that? But clearly there's some pretty significant issues out there that I would agree with, perhaps some stuff that we could see further that would help alleviate some of that concern would help.
Yeah. All right, thank you. Commissioner Preston, do you have any
I have the same concerns as the Commissioner Green and Commissioner Devlin.
Thank you. Commissioner Myers, do you have anything else to add?
I'd like to have a legal opinion regarding the variance back in 2005. And I think that's important for us to move forward.
Vice Mayor Pavlin?
I would agree at this point, we have some issues that we need to iron out before we can recommend from this body.
Okay. And Vice Chair St. Clair? Anything you want?
Well, before everybody started talking, I was thinking the same thing, so I don't think I have anything to add. There's too many encumbrances as well as, I think, issues, and well, if it's looking for this specifically from an engineering standpoint and the impact standpoint, to see if there's any better way to mitigate that. This also has these encumbrances that aren't clear on what the status of the properties are and the situation. So I think it's premature to have this, and I would amend the motion myself to defer this.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ed. Mayor Williams?
Well, we have a laundry list, and when you have a laundry list that needs to be worked on, then I think it needs to be worked on. So I have to agree with the amended motion.
Okay, thank you. And my only comments are, I also agree with my fellow commissioners where there's still a lot of work to do on this. So we have a motion that's been seconded on the floor. I'd like to amend that motion to defer approval of the request for the Turkey Creek Greenway improvements. And do I have a motion to approve?
Move to approve the amended motion.
Amended motion.
He already moved that,
Yeah.
and I seconded that.
And with a second on the floor, all those in favor say yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Noes? No noes. Let the record show that the motion has been amended to defer.